What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 119 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, making his return to the show, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
I guess we're both making our return to the show this week because there
Yeah,
was no show
I was
last
gonna
week.
say there wasn't one last week, right? So no one returned. We just
Yeah.
missed a week.
We're all back, everybody. Thank you so much. If you guys are a member of our Discord, you will have seen the announcement of what happened last week. Unfortunately, Steve had some personal stuff going on, and then both Max and I, who were going to cover all the shows, got sick 2 days removed from each other. So I was sick, and then as soon as I got better, Max got COVID. So we did our best. I'm so very sorry that we missed 2 out of 3 shows last week. I hope everybody got a chance to go enjoy last week's Nintendo noise because, not a juicy news angle to come in through, but man, Sierra and I set a bar on that one. She was firing on all cylinders that episode, so go check that out if you need a fix from last week. But thank you guys so much for your support and understanding. We hate to miss a week, and everybody was like super supportive and cool about it. So thank you guys for understanding. But we got a juicy one to make up for it this week. It is the week. We are now a few days removed from the Game Awards, right? So you and I have a couple tall orders to get through here today. We got to talk about the results of our predictions, and we got to name the winner of our little exhibition match before we check in on the final predictions, probably next week, right? And then, of course, we're going to talk about kind of our overall reactions to the show, some of the controversy that spun out from the Game Awards, as well as all of the announcements that came out of it. Because, man, this thing felt more like an E3 presentation than ever before this year, huh? So you'll notice Grand Theft Auto not on that list, right? We have an episode planned that'll either be one of the last episodes of this year or one of the first episodes of next year. We're going to talk all about the big announcements and all the games we have to look forward to in 2024. And we will get to our GTA conversation at that point. If you were dying to hear our thoughts on it this week, I apologize. I hope that you can wait just a few weeks more. So,
Yeah, go watch the trailer for the 141th millionth and one time because
it's setting all
that
these
tides you
records.
over. Go
People are
watch the
clearly
trailer
watching it
over
more
and
than
over
once,
again.
huh?
Oh, yeah, they've got to be.
All right. So let's talk about our predictions. We'll start there because this is the easiest way for us. We got to talk about them, and then we can kind of go through each of the categories and we can see who won, and we can react a little bit as appropriate, right? Because I think some of these, we were right on the money. Some of them, I think some of the ones where we were wrong, I am not surprised with the other games that won, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
I think it played out pretty predictably for a lot of these categories, but a couple big upsets. So for first up, game of the year, you and I were both wrong on this one. We both thought Tears of the Kingdom would be able to, I think, carry through, and that the kind of flag that it planted in the first half of the year would that legacy would loom enough to carry it through. And then, of course, it didn't. And indie darling Baldur's Gate 3, which cleaned up 6 awards over the course of the night, of course, took home game of the year, and well deserved.
Yeah, game of the year and a bunch of other categories. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, I think. The more I play of that game, the more I really like it, the more I think it is a special game. I think it probably was deserving of game of the year.
Yeah,
Whether it's our game of the year or not
I
is
think you and I
yet to
both
be seen.
agreed that was the game that would win if not for Tears of the Kingdom, right? Like it's
Yes, yeah.
totally deserved, deeply unsurprising. So yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Huge to see and very cool to see a game of its, you know, like what I think a lot of people would think of as a niche genre coming from an independent studio. Like it's just such a cool Cinderella story and like such a triumph for that team. So something I hope that the industry like perks up and pays attention to, right? That like that kind of
Mhm.
game can make money and win awards and make a big splash if you invest the time and resources into making it right.
I kinda think they're one in a generation, though, that kinda game. I don't know if we get another one for another
No,
7 years at this
no,
point.
right? Because I think
Yeah.
even if people see that and react to it now, it'll take 6 or 7 or 10 years to make another game of
Yeah.
that quality. So Hopefully there's a trend starting right now, and by 2030 we'll be like, oh my god, there's so many
Yeah,
of
it's
these.
gonna be like when we had all the space horror games. It's gonna
Totally.
be, "Oh, it's another Baldur's Gate clone once again. Great,
Yeah.
can't wait to play this." One of the other games I thought might have cleaned up with Game of the Year was Alan Wake 2, because we did see that they'd won, I think it was the joystick golden joystick,
Yeah. I mean, it
for
did
Game of the
it
Year.
did do really well. I mean, the next 3 categories, game direction, best narrative, and art direction, Alan Wake won in all 3 categories.
I was
So
surprised with art direction. I really
I
was.
think it's because we talked about this, it's the animation, right? Like, that was the one I got that was the first point I got on the board was I thought that Alan Wake would win for art direction. And again, like, you see people talk about it, and so much of it is the animation, the style of the game, how,
Mhm.
the way that enemies move, like, creates this atmosphere, like, you hear so much conversation about the feel and the tone of that game, and, like, that's art direction, right? Like, it's,
It's one I'm hoping to play over the holiday period. I
yeah.
really would love to check it out. I think at least one of us needs to, really.
Yeah, I think Sarah said she wants to play it, so I might, like, try to just, like, watch her play it because I'm a coward, but we'll see how that goes. I'll tell you what, since this week, the bunch of these games that got nominated, I've jumped into. I'm, like, checking a lot of indie
I
boxes.
know. I saw on Discord that you, like, are playing indie game of the year, Sea of Stars, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Pete, when are you gonna finish the other games that you started that we spoke about? Like, you're starting a new game and you've not finished the other ones?"
I started a
You were
lot
like,
of new
"I've got
games
no
this
time. I've got no time to play Baldur's Gate. I can't do this." And you play
well,
and you start another turn-based game instead of playing Baldur's Gate 3?
because here's the thing, the thing I've come down on with Baldur's Gate is the same thing that Max talked about last week, which is that I just did not like that game. If I played that game the way I want to play that game, I would not have played any of the stuff that came out in the back half of this year, right? So I
Yeah.
would not have played Starfield. I would not have played Spider-Man. I would not have played Mario. I would not have played Mario RPG, Sea of Stars, Pizza Tower, any of these other games that I've started and gotten into. And I think I need
You
to
like
just
Pizza Tower?
I really like it. Yeah,
Good.
we'll
Have
talk
you
about
played
it.
Wario Land 4? Have
I
you played
haven't.
that?
Now
Okay, when
now
after
I want
that,
to.
you need to play that, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely it's got the sauce for me. Um,
Mhm.
so with that in mind, I think I've accepted that Baldur's Gate is just the one that got away from me this year and that I'm gonna play it at the beginning of next year. And I think similar to like my relationship with Persona, it'll be like that kind of game where it's like, "Oh, yeah, like this is the
I
best
should
game
have
that came
played
out that
this,
year
yeah.
probably, but I didn't play it that year just because I couldn't," because I wanna play it for 100 hours. I don't wanna play 30 hours of it in December and be like, "It would have maybe been my game of the year if I beat it, but I didn't." So, and then I didn't play any of these other games that I could have played and actually ranked, right? So
Mhm.
that's kinda where I'm at with Baldur's Gate 3. It's I love what I've played of it, and I think it has a really high chance of being, like, my favorite game ever if it gets its hooks into me the way I think it has, right, so far. But yeah, it's just such a Herculean undertaking that I think I need to accept that it's not happening for me this year and that it'll be an honorable mention, for me next year, right? And I'll lament that I didn't prioritize it over all these other games, and that'll be that? But
Yeah,
that
it's a
I
tough
had
one.
to make that decision for myself. If I wanna play any of these other games that should be in consideration.
I know I'm not gonna finish Baldur's Gate, but I do wanna play more. I'd like to at least finish Act 1 by the time we discuss,
Yeah.
Game of the Year. I've made a little bit of progress. I've been playing The Last of Us, and I kinda wanna talk about that when we do Game of the Year as well. It's like, um I don't know, most
Most
improved or
improved.
something. Like Cyberpunk won like best ongoing, right?
I
And
told
it's
you,
like
we gotta come up with superlatives. We gotta do, like, best indie, best whatever. Because like, I would love to have that's an award in the NBA. They have a most improved player. It's like, who, like, had the biggest jump as that would be hilarious to be like, "Most improved game." Yeah, The Last of Us on PC because it was garbage, and now it's good.
mm, yeah, genuinely, it was actually playable.
It's funny.
I made it to the winter, so yeah.
So to get us back to our predictions here, so for direction, I guess Baldur's Gate 3, you guess Super Mario Wonder, Alan Wake 2 took it. For narrative, we both guessed Baldur's Gate 3, Alan Wake 2 took it. For art direction, I guessed Alan Wake 2. You guessed Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Alan Wake took it, getting me my first point on the board. Next up, we have score and music. I guessed Final Fantasy 16, which won. You guessed Hi-Fi Rush, so that's another point for me there. Audio design, we both guessed Hi-Fi Rush. That unsurprisingly took the category, so we both got another point there. For performance, I guessed Neil Newborn from Baldur's Gate 3. You guessed Idris Elba from Cyberpunk. Neil Newborn did end up taking me the win, so that was another point for me. For accessibility, we had Forza Motorsport, and Forza Motorsport took the win there. Again, not a surprising one, right? Signing is like a
Mhm.
huge thing, and like no other game has ever done that before. And like how many people use ASL or BSL to speak, right? Not a surprising one there. I jumped through a couple there, like I'm Jeff Keighley, but any of those surprise you or?
Wow, nice. No, not really. I mean, if it wasn't gonna be, I kind of thought Neil Newborn would get it, but you know, if it, I think I've said when we did the predictions, I'll pick Idris because I like Idris as well.
Yeah,
Um,
fair enough.
Score music, you know, Final Fantasy always has great music. Really unsurprising. Did a
Yeah,
great, they did a great musical orchestral performance of, I think it's the next Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth.
yeah, the
The
theme from that
which, you know,
that
is
was
cool.
cool. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no real surprises.
yeah, yeah, I think they're all I mean, obviously I guessed right on all of them, so I'm not surprised, but yeah, I think they're all ones that it's like even if you didn't think they would take it, it's like, okay, that's probably the other one, right?
Yeah, it's not like Resident Evil 4 Remake picked something up here and I'm like, "Why?" You know?
Right? I didn't win single thing this year, which is crazy. It's
Neither did
Spider-Man 2,
Spider-Man.
same as well. Yeah, it was nominated in like 6 categories, I think. Nothing. Tough
Yeah.
year. Tough year, man. You know? The honor just to be nominated, right? That's what Starfield said. So then we had games for Impact, right? That ended up going to Chia, which I thought was so strange. Like, I feel like the
Really?
buzz around Chia was just not there. Like, and I couldn't believe that it wasn't like Venba or like one of these other games that, like you said, Space for the Unbound, like games that I've heard a lot more conversation about.
Oh, yeah, no, well, I don't know. This, like, game had its moment, I think, but yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I don't know. I've not played any of the games in that category, so it's hard for me to
I'll
pass
tell you what,
judgment on them.
I played Venba this weekend and it's awesome. It's very good. It made me cry. So
That's
play it.
good, yeah.
I think particularly if
Was it the
you are
onions in the cooking that made you cry?
yeah, it
Is
was
that
the
what it
onions. I think particularly if you are someone who, I mean, obviously the story is about immigrant family, right? So I think if you have like if you are an immigrant, if you're a child of immigrants, or even maybe a grandchild of immigrants, like I am, um, I think there's like a lot that you can get out of it. But I think even if you're just somebody who has a relationship with your parents where like maybe you're not as close as you want to be, or that like they're like you just come from such different worlds that like you struggle to relate to one another sometimes. I think that there's like a lot that people can get out of it. Yeah, as somebody who like it doesn't really represent my lived experience at all. I found a lot to connect with, and just kind of the idea of like how food connects us, I think is
What you want about Pete? You've
cool.
told me about your Sunday sauce a million times.
Yeah,
So I know
right, but,
there's at
like
least some kind of connection with food
totally,
there.
yeah, and it's the connection through food for sure, but
Mm,
not the, like, estrangement. Like, I don't have that, like, my dad grew up in America, I grew up in America, right? So, like, we're
mhm,
both children of immigrants, right? And like that's or you know what I mean? Like I'm a grandchild, but like
mhm,
that through line is there, right? But like my dad and I's lived experience is far closer than his versus his grandfather, where his grandfather lived in Italy and emigrated to America, right? Like the way he grew up and the culture that he came from is very different than what his son and then my father grew up in, right? And it's that kind of thing, right? Where it's like there's this really poignant moment where it's like the titular character Venba is like expressing frustration that she can't always understand her son when he talks because he speaks English and he speaks fast because he's a fluent speaker and he's a child, right? And like sometimes she'll struggle to understand him, and the way that that's like represented in the game is I think really inventive, and yeah, it struck a chord with me. And it's very short. It's like you can get through it in a day if you're down to sit down and play through it. So um, definitely a game that I would recommend you check out if you, are looking for something on the more emotional side for sure. Okay, so then we got best ongoing game. You and I both voted for or predicted that Cyberpunk would win, and it did take the category. Um, to some folks' ire, but I think one that makes sense, right? Given kind of the narrative around that game. Best indie and best debut indie. We guessed Cocoon across the board because we figured it would win in one category. It did win best debut. It did not win best indie. Of course, as you said earlier, that honor went to Sea of Stars, another game I started this weekend, and oh boy, that game is good, buddy. It's good. It's real good. I like it a lot. Um,
Yeah, I'm probably not picking that one up this year. Like,
yeah,
if I'm playing a turn-based game, like I said, it's gonna be Baldur's Gate for me.
it's not like super your vibe anyway. Like, not that you
No.
hate turn based, but you're not like a big turn based guy. And the combat in it is really good. Like the balance of challenge without being like knuckle grindy and like needing to, you know, grind up and every like it's very strategy oriented, and if you use strategy well and take advantage of the tools that are presented to you, it's easy to come out of very tough battles on top if you know what you're doing, which that's the balance I want, right? Like I don't want to be like having to do the same boss fight 100 times and then go grind or whatever. That's not fun. But having that moment of like, dang, like all my characters are like one hit away from death, and then because I strategized well, now we're back at full health and I'm pressing against the enemy and I win the battle. Like that is such a fun, rewarding feeling. And it sets you up for that really well. Super cute story too. Like really, really good and heartfelt so far. Enjoying it.
Best RPG you played this year?
Played a lot of RPGs this year, Steve.
You did, yeah.
I played a lot of RPGs. I'm gonna have to roll credits on it before I say it's the best RPG this year. But I'll tell you what, it is in the conversation for me right now because I really, really like. I was praising Mario RPG's combat right the last couple of weeks on Nintendo Noise. I
Mhm.
like this a lot better, and that's not to say that I was wrong about how good Mario RPG was. It's just like this is better, and it has a better story, and it's new, so it's got a
Yeah,
lot going for it
it's
for me.
like 25 years newer, so it's like,
Yeah.
kind of to be expected.
Yeah, right. It should. It should have learnings from those games, right? But it is really cool in that it definitely, in the way that, like, I talk about how, Shovel Knight has the whole like it's a spiritual successor, and it's kind of like, what if we kept making NES games, right? So it's like it's new though, right? Like
Mhm.
it has that ethos to it, but what if modern? This has that feel to it. Like if you're somebody that loves, Chrono Trigger or like Final Fantasy 6 or any of those, classic um 16-bit era JRPGs, this will be like right up your alley for sure. And if you have never taken the plunge and you're interested, I think it's a good point of entry because it is a good balance of like it's challenging, but it has enough like this is a modern game and we want you to be able to get through it type things you can take advantage of if you need help. Like there's kind of that Celeste moment where it's like, oh yeah, like there's like items you can get in game that you can use that'll like make enemies weaker or make them stronger or whatever. Like you can kind of control what experience you want out of it in a way that's obviously very modern. So it's got that going for it too.
Did you play that previous game, The Messenger? I know Max did.
No, yeah, I never got around to it. It was one of those ones that kind of just passed me by.
Think you'll go back to it? It's set in the same universe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm.
Yes. That makes me more interested because I'm interested in the universe a lot. So that does kind of make me think maybe I'll consider it more seriously. That's cool. I
More
didn't know
more
that.
developers should do that, like a shared universe
Shared
between their
universes
games.
are cool if you do them well, and, like, I think
Mhm.
too many people, like, got in their head that, like, shared universes means you need to do, like, what Marvel does, right? Where it's, like, everything is, like, this is in converse but it's, like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, it's just as cool, like, to have just, like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is in that universe," and it's, like, but, like, how much that matters doesn't it's, like I like it when that kinda stuff is, like, sometimes just, like, "Oh, if you notice it and you care, then great." Like, that's a cool thing for you to engage with, but if you just play those 2 games, and you're like, "Those are 2 good games." That's great. Like, that's all it needs to be. Okay. So now, next up is best mobile. I guessed that it would be Honkai Star Rails. You guessed it would be Monster Hunter Now. Honkai ended up taking the point. Best AR VR game, we were both wrong. I guess GT7, Gran Turismo, and you guessed Humanity. It ended up being RE Village. Best action game went to Armored Core 6, which was my guess. You guessed Hi-Fi Rush. Best action adventure game went to Tears of the Kingdom. The only thing it won. Crazy. Crazy to think about.
I mean, is it though? Like, best direction, best music, is it really that different to, like, Breath of the Wild from 5 years ago?
I think direction, I would say it is, but like the idea that
But,
like,
like, all you know, it's like,
yeah, I'm with you. Where it's like, okay, like
we kind of already awarded this game 5 years ago.
totally.
Do we do the same, or do we give it something fresh like Alan Wake 2
And you still
or
acknowledged it
Baldur's
was the
Gate?
best in the genre in which it
Yeah.
exists. So like fair play, right? Like I'm not upset about it. It's more just like if you had said like if you had if I could go back in
If
time.
we were predicting last year, right,
Yeah.
what's gonna win next year of the games we know, I'm going in and I'm saying Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not even guessing that Baldur's Gate's gonna rank. As much as we were excited about that
Yeah.
game, I wouldn't have guessed that
I
it would
think
have
up
cleared
until
off
the
in the same
day
way it
that
has.
game came out, we wouldn't have guessed that it won
No,
6 game awards. Right? Like not even
no.
no, no way. Right? Like
And you know
maybe
the
best RPG.
craziest thing that was not announced at the Game Awards is the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 came to Xbox the day after the Game Awards, and I'm just like,
I think they were
why would
supposed to have announced it and then didn't.
like,
I
why did you not announce it? It's the game of the year, and you didn't
yeah.
say that it's now on Xbox?
I
Like,
like
what?
just in passing, I saw something about this where I feel like maybe they were supposed to and it got lost in the shuffle or something. I don't quite remember, but I did think that was a bit odd. Um, love that though for me, frankly, that I can play it on every device I own now because that means every room in my house I can play Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to
Well,
make it way
I'm
easier to play it next year.
yeah, I'm now, like, I can turn on that crossplay, and I finally got it working on my Steam Deck again, and
Nice,
I can now move over to Xbox when I want to. It's great.
good,
I'm living that crossplay life.
very good. Speaking of, Baldur's Gate 3 took home Best RPG. We both voted for that. For Best Fighting Game, I guess Mortal Kombat 1. You guessed Street Fighter 6. In retrospect, not a great one on my part. You took the point there. Family, we both guessed Super Mario Bros. Wonder. That ended up being the winner. For Sim Strategy Game, Pikmin 4 ended up winning. That was my guess. You guessed City Skylines 2. This was great to see. I love Pikmin 4. I feel like this game got really kind of lost in the shuffle of how good this year was, but it is really an exceptional game and great to see that it's like I think now the best selling in the franchise. And like when it won, folks cheered loud for it. And I was super
I
stoked.
ha they even before it won, when they were calling out the
Yeah.
nominees, people were
Pikmin 4,
cheering loudly
yeah,
for it,
fuck
which is
yeah. Right?
crazy, yeah.
It's like, yeah, good.
I
That game's
I
great.
think it goes to show how good of a year it was for the Switch as well, that
Yeah.
3 Switch exclusives won in each of their kind of categories.
Yeah.
The family category, the action adventure category, and the sim strategy category,
Yeah.
and you have
Spoiler
to have a
alert.
Switch
3
to
of
play
my
them.
top 10 games are fucking Nintendo games this year, which is
Mm,
nuts. Right? Like just the volume of what they put out this year that was that high quality is crazy. You know, for them to have this many games out in a year period is a lot. For them to all be bangers, right? For the worst game they put out to be WarioWare, which still was like what, like low 80s, high 70s. It's like that's all right for a WarioWare. It's like yeah, that's nuts, man. Like Fire Emblem Engage came out this year. Remember that? Nobody
Or
else
was
does.
that also in the sim strategy category
It
as a
was
nominee? I don't
nominated, I
think it
think.
was.
Yeah, Advance Wars was as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Wow.
crazy, man. They put out like 6 games this year, and almost all of them are like an 84 or higher on Metacritic. That's really good, you know?
Mm.
Really good. Okay, so for sports racing, unsurprisingly, Forza Motorsport took it. We both guessed that one right. These last couple, we guessed all of them right. So I'm just gonna tell you who won. Baldur's Gate 3 won Best Multiplayer. The Last of Us on HBO won Best Adaptation, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth won Most Anticipated Game, bringing our final tally to me with 70, or excuse me, 17 points. You with 12. Good show. You know,
Mm.
I'm gonna graciously take the W on this exhibition match and say, well competed. 5
Yeah, I
points,
think
not very
I
much.
think I did alright, and if I wasn't trying to pick different games to you in half the categories, I think I probably would have won a few more. I specifically didn't pick Neil Newborn for a reason, you know? And I'm surprised that we got none of the big categories correct, though. We didn't get any
Yeah.
one of the the game of the year direction or narrative categories, correct?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Yeah, I think we underestimated how effective Alan Wake 2's campaign would be, because obviously the game had a lot of juice coming into this. So I'm like not surprised that it cleaned up as much as it did, but I guess I definitely didn't expect it to be like the second highest winner,
Mhm.
you know? That's a bit surprising to me. But awesome, very, very cool to see, for Remedy. It's obviously a studio with a lot of talent, and, they've kinda continued, I think, to, like, up the ante, with their last couple of releases, so, really cool to see them come in with another obviously Control won Game of the Year a couple years ago, and then this year, they didn't get the big prize, but getting 4, to the Game of the Year winner's 6 is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, I wonder if this is gonna continue their partnership with, Epic Games 'cause, Sam Lake made, like, a comment when he collected the prize that, they seem to be the only one that believed in the
Yeah.
project. I'd imagine
Yeah,
they've
he
tried
said,
pitching Alan Wake to a few publishers, and everyone was just like, "No, why do we
yeah,
wanna do a
he
sequel to a failed game?"
Yeah, I believe what they like in the acceptance, they said like that, like they were the only ones who were willing to bet on like our crazy vision, and
Mm.
like they were a great partner for them. So you hope, right? Like, I mean, I think if there's any like good that can come from how utterly dominant Epic is as a studio, I would love to see them do more stuff like this where they partner with a studio like a Remedy or like what we used to think of Obsidian before they were acquired, right? Where it's like studios that are capable of putting out really, really high quality, critically acclaimed games that just maybe don't always connect with the mass market like that, and give them a little more time, give them a bigger marketing push because you've got the arm of Epic behind it. I mean, Alan Wake 2, like, you know, it was really well advertised, right? You saw it a lot in the lead up to it, and not too much, but like I remember in the week coming up to it and everything, lots of trailers, lots of good interactions with content creators and everything. Like you saw the machine behind it trying to give it the push to get in front of more people, and I think it worked, right? Like
Well, even at the Game Awards, like, they had that big musical performance where Sam Lake was
yeah,
involved.
yeah, yeah, that was cool. That was one of the cooler moments too. That's one thing I will say I did like this year, as we start to transition into like our general reactions to the show. Um, I did think that the musical performances were improved this year because they were actually related to video games, which was
Agreed,
nice.
yeah.
I like, the last couple years where it's like, here's Japanese breakfast, here's Green Day, here's we. It's like I like some of those artists. I don't want to see them play at the Game Awards. It's not a good use of our time, right? Like, we don't need to see someone who has nothing to do with video games come out and play a song. Like, that's
I mean,
not,
we did have people who had nothing to do with video games come out
yeah.
and present awards,
Oh,
which was
yeah. And don't get me wrong. I like I said, this is like the one thing I'm giving them. This was better. That one thing was better than the last couple years. I would say in every other measurable way, I guess aside from the number and caliber of trailer of advertisements that we watched. Yeah, man, like this was the worst it's been in a long time, and maybe ever. Like the I think the pretense of it being an award show felt like it is almost totally fallen away. Like I could not believe how little of our
the
time was
music coming
spent
on straight away.
on the awards. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I have a tweet here from Andy Cortez from Kind of Funny, who I pulled it because this is I saw him express this initially, and I don't want to just parrot somebody else's idea. But he pointed out that the show was we watched 3 hours and 37 minutes of the Game Awards. That's a long time. But honestly, what's an extra 15 minutes to have time for more devs to accept awards and celebrate themselves, especially in a year that's had our industry hit with thousands of layoffs? And like, yeah, man, like this show was nearly 4 hours, and less than 30 minutes of it were for awards, right? Like, and that's a lot, man. Like, and it's like, I know Hideo Kojima is one of the great auteurs of the medium. Him and Jeff are buddies. you give him his 15 minutes or whatever. But literally, man, there's an article I pulled from here that is not really an article. It's a joke. It's from Aftermath dot site. How many Game Awards acceptance speeches could have taken place while Kojima was talking? The answer is 13 and a half.
Jesus. Yeah,
And
it wasn't great, and
and
those are
what
the
did he
people
have to
that got
show?
to
Right?
those are
He
the
came.
people that got to say something.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people didn't even get called up on stage again, which we have complained about in the last few
Best
years.
indie game, not featured.
Nothing. Yeah,
Uh,
no.
Accessibility award, one of those awards that Jeff loves to brag about, right? Of like, we care about inclusivity and we care about this and we care about the future class and this and that. And it's like, okay. And then you push accessibility to the pre show. Interesting. It's like, it's a bad look, man. It's a
I wonder
bad
if
look.
they did I wonder if they do that specifically with games that win multiple awards though, so you only hear from them once. And obviously, Forza Motorsport had won other awards and did, um, a speech for other ones. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but it's,
It's
it,
still
it
not
does,
great.
it does end up feeling like, okay, this is lesser than by putting it in the pre show, right? Like, that's where they rushed through all the esports announcements in a row, right? That's where they
Mhm.
like that's supposed to be the quote unquote minor categories. And like he has gassed up accessibility as a major category. And to see it then get bumped like that, yeah, man. Like I think it was Steve Saylor at the Blind Gamer who said it's like, first you get bumped to the pre-show, and then how long until we're one of the awards that doesn't get to talk? And we just get run
Oh,
by
yeah,
like
yeah,
best indie game.
it's definitely coming. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to a point where no one gets to talk in the pace that it goes. It's kinda crazy how little people did get to speak.
30 minutes and
Um
42 seconds out of the entire 2 hour and 52-minute runtime of the show, not including the pre-show, according to IGN.
Yeah. I think what annoyed me most was we had the celebrities come out to present the awards, and they would do their piece, and they'd be talking about whatever they want to talk about for way longer than the people who were accepting the award came up to talk about. So, like, we'd hear
Yep.
about some movie, whatever that such and such is in, and then they present the award and someone comes up and they get like 2 minutes until the music comes on and they don't even get to speak. And then there was one where there was two people on stage and I can't remember what award it was. And like the
It was
music
Cocoon.
came
It
up
was best
full
debut indie,
blast.
and they had the publishers there. The one publisher talked, and then when he went to pass the mic to the other person on stage, they started
Yeah.
playing the music, and then they turned it off, and then just like
It was so awkward. It
it
was
was
so awkward.
really
Even in
awkward.
the pre-show, there was like a moment where where Sydney was like trying to shuffle the people off. And you could see like she'd look over and like try and shuffle them off twice. It was really, really bad. It was like
Yeah.
so
Uh,
awkward.
so, uh, if you're somebody who's, on Twitter and like in the games press sphere, you may be familiar with one Mike Drucker. He used to be a producer at IGN for like Up at Noon way back in the day. He's like worked on a bunch of late night shows and stuff. He's a comedian and a writer. He's written jokes for like other Game Awards type events and stuff like that. Um, he tweeted, "If you make games, you get 30 seconds to talk at the Game Awards. If you make movies, you get 5 minutes to talk at the Game Awards."
Yeah, yeah,
How long did I
really
have to
good
listen to
point.
Anthony Mackie go back and forth with the crowd or Simu Liu talk about his fucking foot injury? And it's like nothing against those guys, right? Like they're fine or whatever, but it's like I don't. And it's like with Anthony Mackie, he was nominated for an award that night, right? Like it made sense that he was there. It makes sense for him to talk about Twisted Metal and say, "Hey, thank you guys for watching and supporting the show. Second season's coming out. We were nominated for an award. Thank you so much." Like, fine, fair enough, right? And like, Matthew McConaughey's in a game. He comes and talks about it. Okay, but it's like you're giving these people who have ostensibly nothing to do with video games, or at least very little to do with video games, so, like, I only got to listen to Ainuma talk for 30 seconds, right? Like, this might be his last Zelda game. This might be the last game that he executive
Yeah. With
produces.
him
This might
though,
be the
I
last
didn't
award he ever accepts at the Game Awards, and he talked for 30 seconds? Like, that sucks. Like, game of the year, right? They're getting shuffled off while they're talking about how they had team members who died.
Yeah.
It's like, and I get it. Producing a live event is not easy, and you set that up, and you want to have a system in place to make sure you don't have a repeat of Christopher Judge talking for 8 minutes last year. Shit happens, but like
I mean, even then,
It's
like,
a
that
bad look.
joke at the beginning that Christopher Judge did was pretty bad taste as well about the Call of Duty, campaign length, and
I
it's just like,
mean, here's the thing.
they're sat in the audience, it's just like, "Come on, this is meant to be a celebration of
So many
developers and,
people
like, video games."
the cuts to people just with their just like, "Oh shit." Like they like,
Yeah.
"Whoa." Like they went for it, huh? Like damn. It's like
Yeah, I know, I
crazy.
was shocked.
And again, like, you know, I don't know. That joke I don't think is honestly too like I don't think it's that bad, honestly. Like, I think it kind of got blown out of proportion. And then
Mhm.
there was like a lot of like, oh, here's all these tweets from Call of Duty devs like making fun of God of War. And it's like, okay, like let's take it back a notch. But I think that feels so gross because we know that that team went through really extreme crunch to push that game out, right? Not because that was what they wanted. And like on a night where you're supposed to be there celebrating developers, like that does feel like a punch down, especially when you add the context of the fact that there was zero mention of the fact that we've had, you know, probably the most historic year of layoffs in the industry ever, right? Like at
Yeah,
least in
announcement
modern
of
memory.
yet another studio today closed from the Embracer Group,
Yep.
the Time Splitter studio.
That they remade and then they closed it.
It's like, great.
Insane. So, you know, it's yeah, it's all that I think ends up adding up to being like, man, like, you know, as someone who's defended the Game Awards in the past, right? Because like there, it often gets criticized for the commerciality of it, right? That it is a commercial, it is an avenue for advertisers and whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what award shows are, right? Like it's like every production exists to make money, and not everyone, but this of this scale, right? Like it needs to make a certain amount of money to pay for the space, to make sure they can do it again, to, you know, it's like I get that. And I have given Jeff so much rope. We both have given him so much rope for that of like, I expect there to be a certain amount of, you know, crass, like celebrity cameos and stuff that just feels like, you know, tone deaf, right? Or it's like, oh, like let's claw for relevance and like have people pay attention to us and have Al Pacino show up so it seems like we're a real award show. And it's like that shit I don't like. And it's like I think it's really disrespectful to the legacy of video games. Like video games are a bigger, more popular art form now than movies are. We do not need to chase Hollywood actors for legitimacy. I would much rather see someone like, you know, and again, remove the obviously the award winners should talk for longer. But like I much prefer when you have somebody like Reggie come out, right? Who's like a celebrity in this industry, right? Like we're excited to see him come out and talk and, you know, like when he talks about games, you know that it's sincere and it's coming from a place of like, yeah, like I've worked in this industry. I was a fan before I worked in it and I'm still a fan and I'm still involved and it's like those are the people we want to hear from, right? And like you can get people like that. And it's like there's also like content creators and stuff. Like why don't you pull in somebody that's like, you know, like bring in like a former winner of like content creator of the year and have them present the award or like have somebody that's like, you know, somebody you know from this fucking industry, right? Whoever that is. You know, it's like why Phil Spencer could come out and give an award. You could have Sarah Bond come out and give an award. Like those are the types of people we should be tapping, not, you know, guys from the Marvel movies and shit. You know, it's like that's it just feels so like almost embarrassed that it's about games, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one, right? I think a lot of the connections were with video games this year, and the music presentations, as you said, were so much better than the last few years.
Yeah.
Every
That was a
single
big
one
improvement.
did seem to be about did seem to be related to video games in some way, and I think the music stuff was definitely to try and curb a Christopher Judge situation. They just went too far in the other direction. And I do think it will improve again next year. I hope we
I mean,
do get
it got a
fewer.
lot of backlash this year in a way that I don't think it like there's always been people that don't like it, but I think that there have often been folks like us who are like, well, it's not perfect, but it's wishy-washy about the ways in which it needs to get better. This year, it's like I did not see any positive reaction from a significant group of
Mhm.
people. And you even have like outlets that are on the voting board writing op-eds about how it has gone too far and it's on the wrong side of things this year, you know? So I think you're probably right. Like I think Jeff, like, cares about the quality of the product a lot, right? Like, it's his baby, so I'm sure he's gonna listen to that feedback and try to make adjustments, but it's like, I just don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know because like, I think there's an argument to be made that the show is too many things, you know? That it's like, it wants to be this, like, big E3 style, like, announcements, like, "That's why you're here," right? And it's like, "No, like, it's supposed to be an award show, and if it's an award show, the awards need to be at least half of it. Otherwise, it's not a fucking award show. It's a commercial. And if it is that, fine. Just acknowledge that that's what it is and lean into that and just let it be that and stop trying to like position it as I am the elder statesman of video games and we are here to honor all of the devs and all we all love devs and that's what we're here to do. And it's like, are we though, or are we here to look at commercials? Because I can get
I
down.
go there for the commercials. I don't go there for the awards anymore, and I haven't for the last few years. If I wanna see people collect awards, I watch the DICE Awards or I watch
Yep.
the BAFTAs, and I
Or the
go
golden
and I get
joysticks.
to yeah, and I get to see people collect their awards, and it's a traditional award ceremony like something like the Oscars, where there's very little stuff in between. It's just someone emceeing on stage, and they call the next person. And I think I'm gonna continue to watch those because I love them. I love watching the BAFTAs, I think it's great. And I'm gonna continue to watch the Game Awards because I came here and I did come away with some really cool games that I was excited about. But it was a bit of a piss take. Every single time some that music would come on, I would laugh and I would get annoyed, and I was just like, "Seriously? Again?
And we're like
Again with
and
the
then we stop
music?"
and run through 5 categories and it's like, man, I think part of the reason I'm this upset about it is because I have given him the benefit of the doubt so much over the last couple of years and that, like, I have been like, I do believe that Jeff Keighley cares about video games and cares about the industry and wants this to be something that is a celebration and that is this thing that, you know, uh, shows the rest of the world, how great video games are and everything. And like, I don't know, maybe he does still feel that way at the end of the day, like in his bones, but like, I think he's increasingly getting further and further away from that. And like not mentioning the layoffs, not addressing and that's another thing we didn't even talk about, right? Like there was the whole there was a letter that was written
The future
by
class
the
thing.
members of the Game Awards future class, right? Which is that group of young, not always young, but like up and coming creatives that they always highlight. And it's, like usually like highlighting folks who are like diverse and have like all these different backgrounds and like, oh, this is the future of the industry and these people are pushing the industry forward, pushing the medium forward, right? And there was a letter that was signed by 3,000 people, around 3,000 people, of the future class that was saying that they were asking formally for the Game Awards to acknowledge the ongoing human rights issue going on in Gaza, right? The conflict going on there, and to call for a ceasefire and to express, and this is a direct quote, express support for the protection of Palestinian human rights, right? And obviously, no mention of any of that. And that's from 3,000 people, right? That they have honored and said, we stand behind these people. And it's like, and again, it's like you can sit here and say, and I've seen people say this, Jeff Keighley is not a journalist. He's not this, he's not that. It's not his job to comment on, world events. It's not his job to comment on layoffs, right? Like that's not what he's here to do.
Didn't they say something about Ukraine last year?
I think they did. Yeah. I think you're right. But that's not a controversial thing to say, right? So that's safe. That was a safe thing to say. Um, and that's where the critique it comes in, right? And it's like whether or not you agree with that or whatever is fine. But I think when you have the argument, right, where like Jeff does position himself as like an elder statesman of video games and as one of like the guys, and he has positioned his show as the award show, as the Oscars of the
Biggest night in
video
gaming.
exactly. And if you're gonna call it that, and you're gonna grandstand and say this is a celebration of developers and the people that make games, and the people who love games, and then not acknowledge that it's been a record setting year for people being laid off, right? To not acknowledge this request made by folks that you have decided are honorees and that you've associated with your brand, and they formally ask you to do this on their behalf, and you don't even entertain it, is like that. I again, it's like it's a bad look. And even if I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, even if I want to say that I think he can do better and this and that, it's like you got to give him his lumps, because I think that this year was just like from stem to stern. It's like the grossness and the crass commercialization of the show feels like it's fucking bleeding through the cracks for me. And the stuff that I have given a pass in the past, it's way, way, way harder for me to swallow this year and be like, this is fine. And it not only, just like ethically, morally, right? Like as somebody with a platform, and I'm talking to you about this feeling like I need to say this because it's how I feel. It also impacted my enjoyment of the show as a viewer. Like I did find myself being like more of this shit, right? Like, okay, we're doing this again, right? And it's like, it's 3.5 hours of my life that I gave to watching the show, and I probably could
Yeah,
have gotten.
honestly, I really think it should be shorter. I do think
Yeah.
that is a big issue as well. But do you think him not touching on the layoffs is just because he doesn't want to piss off his commercial partners
I
and
mean,
have
maybe, but
them
there's a way you
annoyed?
can do that without it being like there's a safe way to do that, right? There's a safe, non-inflammatory way to be like, 2023 has been such an incredible year for video games, as you can see by all of the amazing, incredible games that have been nominated this year. That the industry is thriving more than ever, and it is, the most exciting, relevant art form that there is today. And what a shame it would be to acknowledge that without extending our thoughts to all the developers who have been affected by layoffs this year. During this time of economic
Mhm.
uncertainty and crisis, it has been just devastating to see so many of the artists that we love and admire who have made incredible games, some of which are being honored here today, and to see those people lose their jobs. We wish them the best of luck during these uncertain times, and we hope that they land on their feet and come back next year or in years future with the next game of the year, right? I just wrote that off the top of my head. How easy would
I
that have been?
also
You
think
didn't subtweet anybody. You're not like corporate greed led to this. It's you can parrot all the same bullshit points that they say and still express empathy for them as people who we're supposed to be here honoring, you know?
yeah.
And I don't get paid the money Jeff Keighley makes, and I just came up with that from the hip. So I'm just saying, it's not that hard. And if you feel weird about the whole like, oh, like, do I want to make a political statement? You didn't have to. The future class wrote a letter and signed it and asked you. You could have directly quoted and said, this is what they wanted to say. And as the future of the games industry and me being the guy I am, it's my job to give them a platform. So here's what they had to say, and let one of them speak. You could have done that. Right. And it's like, you might get heat for it, but it's also like, that's the right thing to do. And like at some point, I think that like you got to draw a line with some of this stuff where it's like, man, like at what point am I just cashing you a blank check and saying whatever you do is fine? It's like, and
Mhm.
this to me pushed me over that edge where I'm just like,
Do you think
man,
you're gonna
like
tune in next year?
I don't know. This is the first year coming off of it where I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch it live next year, because I think
I
if
mean,
what
I
I,
don't watch it live because it's on too fucking late,
yeah,
and you can then skip through some of the shit
well,
that
and
you
like, and
don't
I,
wanna
I,
watch.
I had to do that. Like, I started it like 20 minutes late or something like that, 30 minutes late, and I ended up catching up because I would just skip through the commercials. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So when I skip through, that's 30 minutes of content then that I was able to skip through, and I caught the end of it live. It's like, All right. And I didn't skip any of the announcements. I didn't skip any of the talking, nothing, just the commercials, just
It's
the
kind of weird though, sometimes those commercials and those announcements kind of blend into one another, and you don't really know which one's an
yep,
advert and which one's an announcement, and both of them have been paid for. Both
sure.
have paid for the announcements to be there. So, like, is there really a difference at that point?
Uh, you know, uh, there is, I guess, but it's like it's it's uh it's circumstantial, right? Like it's
Yeah.
so.
Which way do you think it goes when Kojima's involved, though?
Oh,
Do you
I mean
think Jeff's
that's
paying him? Do you think there's any
oh,
payment
that's the
there?
thing is I don't think every announcement
No.
you're
But,
paying to
some
be
of them
there.
I do think
The
they are.
commercials are definitely, right? That's what pays for the show. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, I think a lot of the big announcements are like, no, like they're it's a quid pro quo thing, right? It's like the show
I
benefits
don't
from
know about
having
that
them.
because I used to think that about, like, the PlayStation, Direct, what are they called? State of Plays, right?
Yeah.
But then we found out that they are charged
See,
for it.
that's
They do
different to
charge
me
for those
though, because
positions.
that's a I could see you why you pay for that because it's a marketing beat, right? That like PlayStation doesn't make money off of this. Jeff does. Like the Game Awards generates a profit, and you being like, the
I've got
like
my big game here for you,
yeah,
yeah.
like just like I'll pull one for, and we can transition into this because I don't honestly have anything else to say. I'm disappointed. Do better next year, Jeff. I believe that you can do better. But yeah, you let me down here, man. I think, and I think you let a lot of people down, and I think you can do better than that. Um, but I look at something like, oh, like the reveal of like Marvel's Blade, right, is my top announcement from this show, in development by Arcane. Having that kind of announcement at the show is why people tune in and watch it. You said yourself, you tune
Mhm.
in for the announcements. So like, I don't think that they're paying for that, probably, right? They're probably not paying it.
No, but that wasn't really like a
It's not an
big glitzy
advert,
announcement. It wasn't
right?
like an ad or anything. That was like, we're here, we're in the studio, we're talking about something exciting that we're working on.
Exactly.
We're now working
And
on
I
a
think I
new
think it's
Blade game.
it's probably based on that, right? Where it's like I think if there's stuff that it's like, oh yeah, like we definitely want this in the show because it's hype, then yeah, like maybe you don't pay for that, right? And it's like
Mhm.
if it's the kind of announcements where it's like, oh, okay, does anyone really care? Like, does the mass market care about this enough for this to be on this stage? Maybe not, but you pay to be there, and then I don't know. I'd be interested to understand where that line is because I think you're probably I don't think Kojima is paying to be on stage for 15 minutes, right?
No.
I don't think that's how that goes, right?
No, definitely not. No. What did you think of OD? Formerly Overdose when it leaked, but now just seemingly OD.
I think I think I really, really respect Kojima as an
Mm.
auteur and as one of the premier auteurs of the medium. And also, I really, really resent the way that he markets his games.
Me too.
Um, I am deeply frustrated that he had about 30 seconds of nothing to show us and then talked about it for 15
Some
minutes.
cool tech on display though,
Great.
the metahuman stuff,
Yeah,
but
cool.
we still don't know what the
Maybe 5
cloud
minutes.
stuff is that he's
Maybe
working with on Xbox. We still don't really know what the game is.
and it's
It
like,
sounds to me
it
like he's
takes advantage
finally
of cloud
done.
technology. It's a
Yeah,
video
but
game.
what is
It's
it?
a movie, and Jordan Peele worked on it, but then also a bunch
Yeah.
of other people did, and I can't it's like, I don't alright, like, is this actually gonna be I don't know.
Is it actually gonna be good? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
I have no idea. It
because I
sounds to
gotta be
me
honest
though,
with you,
he's
I
finally
watched
done what he's always wanted to do, which is make a movie, and I
good for
said
him.
that when I was playing Death Stranding, right?
Good for
It
him,
was
though.
like
Like,
it's
that's
like
fine. I just, like and I honestly am like, I'm down for him to do weird art house stuff like that, but it's like, I just don't wanna hear him talk about it 15 minutes a year for the next 10 years, right? Like, the amount of
yeah, we got Death
fucking
Stranding 2 on the go as well, so you get ready for that at Summer Game Fest.
yeah, which whatever. But like, even that, right? Like, it's like we've seen it, like, once versus, like, I saw that game I saw hours of that game before it came out, and it's
And
like
I
I was
still didn't
never
really know what
interested
it
in it.
was, yeah.
Yeah, and if I was never interested in it, and that's what drives me crazy. It's like he did not need 15 minutes of this fucking show, right? I would much rather hear the team behind Sea of Stars get to accept Indie Game of the Year than to hear Kojima talk about a thing that is not a thing for 15 minutes. It's ridiculous. And
Mhm.
it's not like I get it. I get the star power that he carries. I get the hype behind that. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, right? 15 minutes is insane. Is insane. That is half the time that was spent on acceptance speeches in the entire show. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of Kojima's games anyway. Like I respect him as a man, as a developer, as someone who
Yeah.
is, great at his
He's
craft,
done a
but
lot
I
for
never
the
got
medium.
into Metal Gear. I was more of a Resident Evil guy than a Silent Hill guy. I didn't like Death Stranding. OD looks weird as fuck. I have no idea what it's gonna be. Um, but I guess we'll wait and see. I love Jordan Peele's stuff though, so the fact that he's working on a game
Yeah.
is exciting.
I, you know, let's see. I
Yeah.
hope I like it. I'm not here to I don't care about whether or not the project is good, right? It's like almost irrelevant to what frustrates me about it. It's just that I like his ability to just come out and be like, "I've got some smoke and mirrors to show you," and we're all like, "Yes, yes, please, spit it down my throat, daddy." It's like, can we fucking cool it? You know? Anyway,
Mhm.
let's talk about the announcements in a second here. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of December. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobe, Pilkey, Snackago, and Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go and show your support like they did, or check out some of those shows, like last week's Nintendo Noise, go give it a listen. A plus episode.
I
You
need
can
to
go.
listen to it. I really do.
Sierra was cracking me the fuck up, dude. She was killing me. Um, go check it out. It was a good episode, and you can find all that and much more over on FlipScreen.games. That's the website. You can find our Discord. You can write into the show. However you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning into another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast and for being a member of the community. Okay, so I we're in a weird spot, right? Where it's like there's so much stuff got announced. I don't think we need to talk about all of it. I think we need to talk about the
Definitely
things
don't.
that are relevant to our interests, right? We already talked about OD. I think that is probably arguably one of the biggest things that came out of it, just because like that game, it's been
It's
very
Kojima.
nebulous. Yeah, and we got idea of it. Obviously, that's a big deal. Um, the announcement of Monster Hunter Wilds coming 2025. That's another really big one, right? Like obviously we've had a couple Monster Hunter games in the last few years, but World on PS4 and Xbox was kind of like their big return to form for like, major HD consoles. This is the first follow-up since that. Obviously that's a big deal.
I look forward to everyone getting that confused in the same way that I always got Outer Worlds and Outer Wilds confused. Now I can get Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Wilds confused for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's I get it. It looks but like it's a tough title. It's a little tough. But, it kinda looks like it's, like, open worldy or something, but I don't know.
Yeah,
It
well, I
looks
mean, World was, right? It was open world. I mean,
kind
it could
of
be
it's, like,
open
open area,
area. Yeah, it could
you
be open
know?
area still.
Maybe that's this yeah, but either way, obviously a big deal for Monster Hunter folks, of which there are many, so big one for sure.
Yeah, I know Max said he was really hyped about that one.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, World was, like, a huge success for them, right? Like, that game was a massive, like, uh, coming out party for that IP in the West, and, like, the last couple games, like, have been on an upward trajectory sales-wise, I think because of what a big deal that game was, so,
Mhm.
seeing them come up, with the next at bat for that, right? All the next gen bells and whistles, you gotta imagine that that's gonna be something that really, really, connects when it's the time. So aside from that, I think this is where you start to get into the stuff that's like on my list anyway. So my number one, like I said, was Marvel's Blade being in development at Arcane.
And the good
Obviously,
Arcane studio as well.
yeah. No, this is sick as fuck, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like,
no.
here's the thing. I think it is a bummer, right? To think that like we might be moving into an era of video games where licensed stuff becomes like a lot more relevant just because it's easier to make a good game with an established IP than it is to develop a new IP and then make a good game and then keep making a new game. It's a lot. I get it. Arcane is a studio that I think would really benefit from this though, because Arcane has made, especially this Arcane, right? This is
This is the Deathloop studio.
yeah, Lion,
Arcane
the
Leon.
Leon from Paris, and they're the Deathloop studio. They're also the Dishonored studio, right? One of my favorite franchises of all time. Multiple time game of the year winner for me. That franchise. Um, they're so good. Like they make incredible, dynamic, critically acclaimed games that just do not sell very well because the immersive sim genre is just not. It's never had like a big, mass market breakthrough moment like that. And Blade could be it.
I think Hitman was the immersive sim massive
Yeah,
market
no,
breakthrough
yeah,
moment.
that's fair. You're right. You're right. That is it. But even that, right, is like that game super successful, not to take anything away from it, but like the reason they got spun off to be independent again and take Hitman and walk away was because it like was not reaching the heights
Mhm.
of what Square wanted, right? As like a quote unquote triple A game or whatever, which is like, who gives a shit, right? They do, obviously. Working really well for IO
Yeah.
Interactive now that they're independent. So good for them. But like this is a great opportunity for Arcane, right? This is a game that, Blade has a movie coming out with Mahershala Ali in it. Like, if that's good, Blade is going to be, relevant in a way that arguably he never has been before. At least the most relevant he's been since the Wesley Snipes movies back in the day that a lot of people love and remember very
I love those
fondly.
films.
They're great, right? I don't know how well they hold them now, but I love them. I loved the fuck out of them when I was a teenager for sure. Um, so yeah, it's like you take a studio with it's the Insomniac equation, right? You take a studio with that level of talent, that level of experience, and you put them with an IP that has juice that people can get into. That even if they don't know Blade, they know Marvel, and it's like yeah, all right, okay, like you can buy in and it's not like, what is this steampunk whale punk world that I gotta invest myself in? And it's a much easier sell to buy in on an established property like this. And this could finally be their breakout where they have a game that like, is not only critically acclaimed, but everybody plays it and it sells really well and it gets more attention and it wins some game awards. And, the next thing that they do, whether it's another license thing or it's they go back to the original well again, they'll have more weight behind it because they'll be like, hey, the studio behind Deathloop, right? We all remember Deathloop, studio behind Blade. Y'all loved Blade. Here's and it's like they need that. They need a fucking big like blockbuster commercial W that doesn't move them away from the core identity of what that studio is, which is making really good, really deep immersive sims. And I think this could be their shot, right? It's the idea is like Blades in Paris, the city's been taken over by vampires, and it's all walled off. So it's like, great, fucking A. Like that's more or
Yeah.
less the setting for Dishonored, right? Is like you're in a city, there's a plague, it's walled off, you gotta do your thing. Okay, great, awesome. And you can, maybe get some mileage out of some of the work they did on Redfall and all the vampire stuff, right? It's like,
I don't
okay.
think anything's coming over from Redfall from the Austin studio. This looked very much like the team that was working on Deathloop. I know the guy that was there, I can't remember his name, was the director of Deathloop, and
Yeah.
he was the one that was there announcing Marvel's Blade.
I
Few
can never
questions
remember
of
his
a
name,
no,
which
me
makes
neither.
me so
No,
upset
it's
because he's like
terrible.
one of my favorite
Yeah, he's
directors.
great.
And it's like, I really should know this guy's name.
Yeah, a few questions have arisen. When the hell's it coming out? Is this one of those like announcements for hire announcements where we're in a room full of developers, so why not say that we're working on a Blade game
Says
and
here,
potentially we could hire some of these people?
I there's a Marvel Studios announcement that I was able to pull here. According to that announcement, development has just begun. So
Yeah,
yeah, so I think it's probably what you said, where they're probably like, hey, we're out here making this game, come work on it.
you want to come work? Yeah, which
Yeah.
makes sense. We don't know if this is going to be an exclusive to Microsoft platforms, and no logos were included in the
Oh, it
trailer.
definitely is. It definitely
You
is.
think so?
Yeah, this is gonna be an Xbox exclusive for sure. Why not?
Why would you not shout that from the rafters then in the announcement?
I just don't think you're there yet. It's like I there's no benefit to announcing that it's exclusive right now.
Mm,
It's like with the Indiana Jones game, right? Like
yes. Yeah.
that's going to be exclusive. We know that. Like at least I think it is, right? Like, and I don't see why you don't tell us that, except for the fact that it's like, well, there's no benefit to telling it right now, and it creates conversation until you confirm it. But they own
Which
the
is
studio
weird
outright.
because
It's going to be exclusive.
yeah, whenever there's a PlayStation announcement, like when there's the Wolverine game that's announced, I have no doubt in my mind that that's only coming to PlayStation and maybe PC a year later, who knows? But
Exactly.
with Xbox, it's difficult though. They seem very sporadic and all over the place. Like we know Call of Duty's coming to every other platform for the
That's
foreseeable
multiplayer though.
future.
I think anything single player will be exclusive. Anything
Do we know
multiplayer
that
will be.
this is single player?
Yeah, they've said it's a mature single player story driven. It's what
Okay,
you'd
great.
expect from Arcane.
Yeah, which was not what I got with Redfall. So I'm happy that
Right.
they're going kind of back to their roots.
Yeah, it's great. It's exactly what you want. For me, that's definitely the highlight. The only other things I wanted to really like talk about were there's the God of War DLC that's out next week. That seems cool. It's like a roguelike kind of thing, but it has like a story element to it. As somebody invested in that narrative, I'm interested in more and kind of seeing like where we go from where it left off. There was the Sega announcing 5 games in one trailer. I'm not even that big into any of those franchises, but I just thought that
I'm
was hype
thinking
as
to
shit.
so many of those games. Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, yes, please.
It was
Would have been
awesome
nice.
though.
The and more. I'm really hoping there's a new Outrun game because we need more
Yeah.
arcade races, and that'd be great. Um, yeah, that was a phenomenal announcement. That was really fun.
And the last one I wanted to call out was just Exodus. This is a team of ex Bioware developers that have a new sci-fi RPG, and basically you play this character known as the Traveler. You're exploring the universe. There's this like race of like aliens called the Celestials that humanity is like trying to overcome. Basically, um, I'm a Bioware stan. So if any of those
Mhm.
folks are out there working on a new RPG, hopefully it's gonna, be in the style of what I want and it'll, connect. So for me,
Justice
those
League,
were my big takeaways for sure.
Justice League went up there for you as one of the great trailers.
No,
Then.
absolutely not. I really wish that game didn't exist. It's so upsetting that we've been waiting for Arcane like for 10 years to make a game and that it's gonna be that and it's gonna suck. Oh
Yeah.
well. Better luck 10 years from now. In 2033, I'll get to play another game from them maybe.
My games I was excited about, very different to yours. Pony Island 2, Panda Circus, which is the new Dan Mullins
That
game.
was
That's
cool.
the developer behind Inscription. Have you played that yet?
No, but I remember. I obviously I'm gonna play Inscription. It's on my list, but I
Mhm.
remember how much you fucked with Pony Island. It was like, oh, cool. Like that's pretty sweet. Yeah,
Mhm. Nice to see. Light No Fire from Hello Games. I was really excited about that.
that
Looks
looks
like
really good.
yeah,
I
looks
don't,
like
it's
maybe it's
maybe not my
finally
kind of game, but like it looks cool. You know?
yeah, I was excited about that. And similarly, Big Walk from House, which looks like it might be something similar, like you co-op up
Yeah,
and you go
same
and
thing.
explore.
It looks cool. I just don't know that it's for me. Like that's not really
I
my kind of
know.
game.
I
But
really
really cool
wanted
personality.
well, I mean, they made Untitled Goose Game. I really just
Yeah.
wanted more of the same, but, I'm happy that they're exploring and are able to continue working with Panic and
I'm
make
glad that
new
they're
stuff.
not doing that actually, because like I think that is like you don't want to be the studio that's like the thing that we're known for is being creative and off the wall and then be like, yeah, let's just double down on what worked, right? It's like, nah, do another
Mm,
weird thing. And if it doesn't work, then you go back to the well and that's fine.
mhm.
But I don't want the second thing you do after something crazy and innovative to just be like more of the same. It's like, all right.
The weirdest announcement for me of the show was the Dave the Diver crossover with Dredge. I did not see that coming
Wacky
from
one.
Marloff. Really
Yeah.
cool. An indie game teaming up with a big publisher that's not an indie. It was nice to see. Um,
Yeah.
Jurassic Park Survival, which I thought was so cool, and why the fuck has this game not been made
I'm
already? Like,
on the
come on.
fence. Like in theory, that sounds awesome, but it was just a cinematic. So it's like, what is this game though?
I
Like,
know, yeah. A lot
you
of the
know?
trailers were just cinematics, which I'm always disappointed with. I wanna see what the game looks like
Yeah.
and know what it is, but I'm interested to know more about that game because if they do it right, it should be really good. That's just
Yeah.
and it's
Give me like
Saber
Dino Crisis,
Interactive.
right? Like,
They've done good games in the past, so yeah, I'm excited about that. Rise of the Golden Idol. We spoke about Case of the Golden Idol before. We're getting a sequel, Rise of the Golden Idol, now published by Netflix, which was really unexpected. So
Yeah.
presumably I can play that as part of my Netflix subscription. And one that I thought would have been on your list, the casting of Frank Stone, a Dead by Daylight spin-off by Behavior Interactive and
Yeah,
Supermassive
I am
Games.
actually very excited for that one. Yeah, that should have been on my list probably. I love Supermassive. They're really good, and Dead by Daylight obviously has a lot of love, and has been a really good game for a really long time. So it's a cool collaboration. It's a cool idea, I think, for a multiplayer game to be like, how do we expand our universe and tell a story? And it's like we don't really have the team for that. Like, let's let another studio do it. Is like that's
Yeah.
actually cool. Like, I would love to see
It's
more.
either that or you go down the TV show route, which is what we saw with Arcane on Netflix, right?
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, and they're doing all those single player spin-off games now too, right? That are like indie
Hmm.
games. And it's like, here's a game about this character from League of Legends. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Which is
That's a
really
cool way
cool.
to do it.
I do like that stuff.
It's
Yeah.
different. And
So
it's like
yeah.
it's another opportunity, right? Like with like we were talking about the Call of Duty thing earlier this year. Like, I'd love to see more companies take risks like that, where it's like, like we got the multiplayer part down, the story. It's like, partner with a studio like this, and all they do is the story part. Like that's their whole bag. It's like that could be kind of cool, I don't know. I wouldn't hate to see more synergy across, like like that kind of game. You know?
No, me neither. But honestly, Activision should just hire some story people. Like
Yeah,
seriously.
that's true too. But
Also, you own Blizzard and they make story games. Just go and talk to them.
can't be cross pollinating like that, Steve. That would be insane. Anyway, so we'll leave it there for today. I think overall, I think by many metrics, this was a very disappointing Game Awards. I think is safe to say. I think obviously when it comes to like the caliber of announcement that came out of it, there's definitely stuff here that I'm excited for. I think the Arcane studio making a Blade game is probably one of the hypest announcements in the last like 5 years for me. Like that's fucking awesome.
Are you more
That
excited
said,
about that than the Wolverine game?
in theory, yes, because I love Insomniac Spider-Man. I love Wolverine. I prefer Wolverine as a character to Blade, but I think I have a better idea of what that game will look like in its end result. Where I'm like the Arcane Blade. I'm like, oh god, there's so fucking much that they specifically could do with that because they're just masters of their craft and that kind of video game, right? And like getting to see them do that with an established character that has a rogues gallery you can pull from and all that kind of like there's just so much untapped potential for both Blade and Arcane. Whereas like a good Wolverine game, I have an idea of what that looks like, where I'm like,
Mhm.
an Arcane Blade is like that's kind of in one way, I'm like, okay, it's gonna be Dishonored, but you're Blade, but in the other way, it's like, I mean, there's so much
There's
potential.
also it's third person, which I didn't realize. It's
They've
the
never done a third person
Yeah,
game
they
like that
never have.
either, which is like, okay, like that's really interesting. Like, I think Wolverine is a safer bet for me that it's like this will almost definitely be a game that I like. Whereas Blade, I'm like, it could be the breakout hit that they need, and how much I love that studio is like that really puts it over for me. You know?
Did you ever finish Deathloop in the end? I can't
Nope,
remember.
sure didn't.
Yeah, you really should. That was one of the
Yeah,
most fun puzzles that I was so sad they didn't do a DLC or some kind of
yeah.
follow-up because it would have been really cool.
That's another one. It fell in a similar time for Baldur's Gate for me, where it came out at a weird time, and I got deep into it, and then other stuff came out, and I'm like, I'll circle back to this,
Yeah.
and
I played that the year after, and I wish I'd have played it on,
yeah.
the previous year because, I loved that game.
I
Thought it
loved
was
I love
fantastic.
I got about halfway through it, right? And I really enjoyed it. So like I will go back to it at some point, but you know, um I didn't end up liking it as much as I liked Dishonored, which did surprise me. But that's less a indictment of that game and more an endorsement of how good Dishonored is.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we'll call it there for the day. If you guys want to write in and let us know what you thought about this year's Game Awards, what could be better, maybe areas where we're not being fair, right? And you think maybe it deserves more credit than we gave it. That's fine too. Or if there's an announcement that you want to highlight as being one of your favorites that we didn't talk about, make sure you write into us in all the ways that you can do so. You can find all of them at flipscreen.games. You can join our Discord, keep the conversation rolling between episodes. You can write into our show at questions@flipscreen.games, or you can just go check out some of our sister shows, some of the other cool stuff we're putting out for you. We've had a lot of great content this year. We've got a lot of great content planned for next year that I'm super excited to talk to you guys about in the weeks to come. But the year's not over yet. We got a couple more big episodes last week, our last full week of shows, and then we'll have a special annual at the end of the year to keep you through on our week off. So plenty of content left in December, but you know me, I'm already looking forward towards January because it's gonna be another good one. You can you heard it here first. You can take that one to the bank. So, any final thoughts on this one, Steve?
No, I'm just excited to put together our list now at this point.
Me
Like,
too.
I'm
Uh,
just I love Game of the Year season, and it's like always kicks it off for me, and I'm like piecing my list together in my mind, where things sit,
This
other
motivated
games
me
I
to play
need
a
to
lot
tick
of those
off.
indie games I hadn't played yet. So like I have touched and ranked like 5 indie games already in the last like 3 days. So
Nice,
I'm on one. And I'll
nice.
tell you this. I'll tell you this at the end of the show because now no one can yell at me. It's not going to be on my list because I didn't like it. I don't like Cocoon.
No, you don't.
I don't
Wow,
like it. I don't like it at all. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you
interesting.
guys for joining us. I told you where you can go, flipscreen.games. That's the website. Go over there and click on some stuff. Helps us out a lot. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the show. I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week. Don't play Cocoon.